This call is now.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fifth and final week of session of the Workmate Startup Acceleration Workshop. It's been an amazing ride so far, and I'm so happy to have had us all come to us far. I'll just crave the indulgence of our facilitator for tonight to give me a couple of minutes while we wait for our other participants to join the room. I think some people are having network challenges, so we'll just give them a couple of minutes for them to join in, and then we will thrive for tonight's session. I know we are quite expectant, and I believe our facilitator is also well loaded to unleash to us. So it's going to be a beautiful evening. Um, Jolly, did I see you last week? Were you at the session last week?
No, I wasn't at the session. I couldn't make it, but I'm here this week. I'm sorry, I'm in a
Oh,
noisy place also.
okay, that's fine, no problems. Yeah, we're happy that you could join us because I noticed I didn't see your shadow last week. All right, that's fine. So I'll let it be for one more minute and then I'll start the session for tonight. So let me just give a couple of seconds more for others to join in. All right. Good evening and welcome everyone. We're having our final session for the Workmate Startup Acceleration Workshop, and I'm delighted and well honored to have our speaker and facilitator for tonight.
Sorry for the delay. We are having some technical issues. Please give us 2 minutes.
All right, good evening, everyone. Sorry, Maxwell has some network issues. You're welcome to tonight's training, and the series has been amazing so far, and we are glad that we are gradually rounding up with a beautiful and much rewarding section. So quickly, I'll be taking the bio of our speaker tonight, so he can take us through the first section of tonight's training. All right, so we have we have Emmanuel Ogunwede, and he's a highly accomplished data engineer with an impressive track record of over 4 years of professional experience. Sorry, I want to be sure you can all hear me. I'm sorry I didn't ask. Can you all hear me? I want to be sure I'm not speaking to myself.
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so his career journey commenced as a data scientist, and over time, he has adaptively evolved, accumulating invaluable expertise in machine learning and software engineering. His have not only owned his college, but also fostered a deep commitment to knowledge sharing. Mane boasts a rich and dynamic background, having made significant contributions to various industries, including FinTech, Edutech, health, and e-commerce. Its current focus revolves around assisting organizations in seamlessly transitioning to the modern data stack, a testament to its adaptability and forward-thinking approach. A relentless pursuit of knowledge characterizes Emmanuel's ethos, permeating rooted in the belief that learning is he is fervently dedicated to empowering others to forge fulfilling careers in the ever-evolving landscape. In his leisure moments, Emmanuel is an enthusiastic explorer of open source data tools and an avid student of diverse data integration patterns. He also cherishes quality time spent with friends, finding balance and inspiration outside the realm of technology. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a welcome to Mr. Emmanuel Ogunwede as he takes us through the first section of this training? Thank you. You're welcome on board, sir. Can we just give him a round of applause? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Emmanuel. You have the floor. Thank you.
Um, Thank you very, very much. Good evening, guys. Super excited and honored to be here. I hope your week has been, I don't know, peaceful and productive, and hopefully not chaotic as mine. Um, yeah, she's done the intro already. I don't think I need to introduce myself. I will just jump right into it. Um, and I'll start by sharing my screen. And please, it's an open-ended session. So if you have questions or anything at all, just feel free to I don't know, post the question in the chat or raise your hand. I'll be very, very happy to slow down and um, carry you along. All right, so let me try to share my screen. Hopefully I have permissions for that. Yeah. Okay, okay. So if you can see my screen, just let me know.
Yes, you can see your screen.
All right, perfect, perfect. So I'm going to be giving a talk on data quality and governance, and I'll basically be walking you through like mostly what I think modern data governance is, right? Like how I've seen it play out in industry today. And then I also understand that this is some sort of acceleration workshop. And so I'm also going to be coming from the standpoint of startups, right? Thinking about how startups usually think about data initiatives and how they engage data governance. And then like I think the height of the conversation will basically be data quality. Data quality is dear to my heart because I've worked on numerous engagements in the last 1 year. That's where like the biggest problem was the quality of data, right? People have very brilliant initiatives that they want to execute. People have very brilliant businesses that they want to start. And one thing that people quickly realize many times is that at the core of this thing is data. Data, can help in many ways. And it's common these days for people to say, "Oh, I want to build an AI startup." You know, someone has reached out to me in the past and he's like, "Oh, we're building a startup and we're going to be using AI to pair people that are looking for houses, yeah, like maybe they want to share or something." And I'm like, "So what data do you have?" No data most of the time, right? And very, very funny use cases like that. Someone who built a rule-based system to help people get access to long-term loans to basically what's it called? Pay mortgages, and then it's like our system is AI powered. I don't know how if else is AI powered if you don't have any data, right? It's just very funny. So those kind of things happen, but then I basically want to expose us to like the world of data governance and data quality. So come along this journey with me. I guess the first question that we'll typically want to answer, or the first question that we'll want to ask is basically what exactly is this data governance, right? Even if you're familiar with data, many times when people throw data governance around, it's usually around policies, and then compliance, right? People are thinking about data governance, and the first thing they're talking about is, oh, we need to ensure that we are GDPR compliant, or there's this other data compliance expectation that maybe a government or a region has from us, and we need to ensure that we are compliant or we are HIPAA compliant or whatever the case may be, depending on the domain you are working in, right? So what exactly is data governance aside from all of these assumptions? So basically, the idea with data governance is that there are a set of actions that you need to take to ensure that your organization's data is in a position where it can help the organization to thrive, right? And so those actions that you take to ensure that, okay, I'm building an organization that is successful, I'm building an organization that can take advantage of its own data to become successful. It's those enablements, those capabilities that comes together to form data governance, right? And data governance, right? Um, is usually driven by business initiatives and operations. And this is how I want you to think about it, right? If you play football or you watch football, there's usually a coach and then there's a team. The team usually you would want the team to comprise of highly skillful players. So think about a team like Real Madrid, think about a team like Man City. If you're thinking Man U, I mean that's your opinion. But I mean just think about like a team that has really skilled players. Many times when the team is not performing, people don't exactly hold the players accountable for this thing, right? The person who is held most accountable, the person who is most likely to get fired at the blink is usually the coach, right? And so why is it the coach's fault? Like, why are people firing the coaches, right? Why aren't people saying, because I don't think I've seen a scenario aside from, I mean, let's not dive into football, aside from some people's goods that, got like with immediate effect was asked to leave the team and whatever, and his contract was terminated. But it's very rare for you to see what's it called, football players, even though they are skillful, they are the one on the fields, they're the one that's expected to score the goal. It's very rare for you to see football players being attacked directly. Why is this? Because the expectation on the coach is to have a vision, is to have a strategy, right? And then what's expected of the coach is to drive the overall strategy of the team, right? So the coach must have a mentality. And if we liken this to wars also, right? Or if we liken this to armies, right? The general thinks about the overall strategy to win the war. The responsibility of an effective soldier is to what? Focus on the battle. So if he's on the field right now fighting, he's not thinking about, next week, who are we going to fight? In 2 weeks' time, who are we going to meet? That's not what he's thinking about. It's basically survival and ensuring success, ensuring that I don't break my rank, ensuring that whatever strategy the general has put in place, I am aligning to that strategy to ensure that we win the battle. But the general is thinking about the battle and is also thinking about what? The war at large. And so whatever decision he's making per unit time can impact, it can make or break everything. And that's how you should think about data governance and business initiatives, or data initiatives and business initiatives. Think of your business initiatives as the coach. Think of your business initiative as the army general, and then think about your data initiatives as your soldiers on the field, and think about your data initiatives as those skilled football players, right? It's usually not about technology and technology alone. There are other things that must come in line. And so, like, the first criteria, I'm building a startup, I'm building a business, is to have a vision for what kind of objectives you want to reach, right? And then work backwards to see how data you are collecting about your customers, data you have about your platform, how you can leverage that data, marry your business objective to that data to ensure success, right? And so if we're going to talk about data governance, I've given us like a high level picture, and then I've tried to paint a scenario, even though some people are probably beefing me now because of Man United. I don't watch football, and I'm not a football fan, but I think I know my goats, right? But then there are actually very specific rules, right? That actually we should be talking about, things we need to understand when we start to talk about data governance. And the first one is the data owner, right? So far through these illustrations, we have kind of established that there has to be a marriage, there has to be a sync, there has to be an agreement between the business and your data initiatives, right? Like, business initiatives must align with data initiatives. And high level, if I can give you some examples, like just to buttress that, right? You might have a company where, let's say you're doing delivery, right? You can say, oh, my goal is that I will deliver to my customers in 20 minutes. That's a business initiative. I want to ensure that my customers will get my orders in under 20 minutes. That's a business initiative. Now you have data points. You can see when the order comes in, you can see when the rider picks up the order, and you can try to understand, okay, why are these riders ineffective? Or on an average, how long is it taking for these riders to turn around to deliver the product to the customer and come back? With these data points, you can now decide that, okay, because of these data points, now my data initiative has to be that I should be able to effectively get all the data that allows me understand why I'm not reaching my goal of delivery in 20 minutes, right? And so when I start to walk backwards from we want to deliver in 20 minutes, it's like you are cooking, you think about the final food, then you start to walk back. For those who don't know how to cook fried rice, you need your rice and you need some ingredients that will make the rice yellow, right? And then you need some vegetables also, right? So how do I walk back from my yellow rice with vegetables on top of it and maybe protein of my choice? How do I walk back from that to the ingredients I need to get it done? And then I identify the ingredients. Once I identify the ingredients, how do I now walk from identifying the ingredients to ensure that, because the carrot will not chop itself, it has to go through a process, right? For it to come, in that beautiful form we like on top of our fried rice, right? And if you want to use saint leaf in your fried rice too, I don't know. I mean, it won't just appear there. You have to get all of these things. You have to refine them, probably wash them, to get them ready, right? And so they are kind of like certain key stakeholders that must come together to ensure success. And the first person is the data owner, right? So typically, if you think about this from the angle of the business, the data owner is a business person, is the person who oversees a particular domain, right? If you have a finance team and that finance team's responsibility is revenue, right? Then, that finance team will basically define certain specific concepts, right? Because what a fulfilled order, for example, can mean, or what an active customer can mean, can vary. If you have a growth team or you have a team that is meeting with VCs, the way you define an active customer will be different from the way your revenue team or your growth team is defining an active customer. Why? Because in the domain of of reaching out, of partnership, you will probably want to extend the length. So your definition is, if a customer has maybe taken an order with us in the last 6 months, then the customer is an active customer. In terms of money revenue, you probably want a shorter period. And so depending on the domain or the team, the definition can change or slightly vary, right? And so the data owner is a business executive who understands the crucial needs of the business and is overseeing that data, taking ownership, taking responsibility for that data, right? And so the data steward now is basically somebody who understands the concepts in the head of the business owner, or understands the business domain, right? But is more involved day to day in working with your data engineers, working with your IT guys to ensure that data, remember our definition of data governance, to ensure that data aligns with the business needs, right? And I'll give you a quick example. Imagine a scenario where you basically, every time you onboard a new customer, we're going to use the e-commerce example again, right? Let's say you're doing B2B. Every time you onboard a new customer, you need to collect information about the location of the customer, like geolocation information. And this is something that, maybe you're dealing with informal retailers, people in the market, mommies and uncles and aunties that are not, very literate, and they don't know what geolocation is all about, right? And so you are typically trying to onboard these people. Let's say you have to collect geolocation information. The only way you can easily map out a strategy to effectively deliver these people's order or align which rider should be responsible for, picking up their order from your warehouse or your office and delivering it to them, is to collect this geolocation information, right? The person who understands, first of all, the need of the geolocation information is the data steward. The data owner knows that this is how fried rice should look, this is how fried rice should be fancy, this is how the carrots should be cut. Do you understand? And so he has a picture, high level, of what his fried rice should look like. The data steward understands how, if he sees the raw data, he understands if the ingredients on the table will help the data owner get what he's looking for, will help the business get what they are looking for out of the data, right? And so the steward is also a business person, but then they typically work hand in hand, day by day, with the technical guys. And so a way I like to think about it, just to map it to people's mind, is typically the data owner is probably the head of maybe a department, and then the data steward is probably an analyst or somebody working within the department that understands what the department is looking for in their data, in raw data, and understands the requirement that must be satisfied. The data custodian, on the other hand, are usually the people that are responsible for the platform. And that's where, a data engineer comes into the picture, right? You're thinking about infrastructure, you're thinking about storage, you're thinking about, okay, all of the different data assets that my organization is creating, right? How do I take care of these things? How do I go from source to destination? How do I ensure that all of this thing works in tandem? In traditional data governance, people typically refer to data custodians as the IT guys. But obviously, if you work in a modern startup, you know that IT is different from software engineering, right? But I mean, let's not dive into that. Okay, so how do you think about data governance, right? How exactly should you be thinking about data governance? There are different data capabilities that can be unlocked through data governance, right? But they will broadly fall under three core objectives, right? And what do I mean by capabilities? Remember that at the starting, I told you that most times when you hear data governance today, people are usually talking about compliance. Most of the time, they're talking about security. Is when people start to talk about security and compliance that people will typically start to mention things like data governance, right? But then, I mean, that is not data governance. Those are capabilities that can be unlocked through data governance, right? And so, what are these three broad umbrellas that we can use to kind of like talk about all of the different capabilities that can be unlocked via data governance? The first one is understand your data, right? The second objective is what? Curate your data, right? And then the third objective is what? Protect your data. If we want to deliver that fried rice to the data owner, if we want to deliver that excellent football team that can win, is it treble or whatever it's called, that can win all the cups, right? We need to know what qualities will make up this team, what kind of players will complement each other, what kind of ingredients we need. Do you understand? And so it's very important to even understand, okay, these are the business objectives, and this is the kind of data we have, right? And so when we're talking about understanding your data, what are we talking about? We're talking about unlocking capabilities like data profiling. We're talking about unlocking capabilities like data lineage. We're talking about unlocking capabilities like data cataloging or data catalogs, right? And so when we talk about data profiling, I know there are probably people here that work in the data science space, works in data analytics. The easiest way to think about data profiling is to think about EDA, right? Exploratory data analysis, right? So data profiling refers to a systematic way, right, of analyzing your data to find out if it has the requisite points, if it has the requisite information potentially that can help you unlock a business objective or achieve a business objective, right? And usually, when we talk about data profiling, it's you trying to understand, okay, what is my data made of? What are the different components, and what is the state of these components, right? And we're going to dig into this again when we start to talk about data quality. Lineage, data lineage. Now, the idea here is that I will have raw data, typically from different sources, right? And let's even like lay a foundation for sources. You may be running ads on TikTok for your organization or your startup. You may be running ads on Facebook. You may be running ads on Twitter, right? And you want to understand how effective your spend is. You may have a funnel and you are directing people to a website and you want to know how they are converting. You may have a product on this website that you're trying to sell. So it's okay, which of these channels are effective? Somehow you need to link all of this data together, right? And which of these channels is converting the most? Where am I getting my biggest revenue based on my ad spend, right? How do I join all of this data together? And how do I identify that somebody at the top of the funnel is the same person at this point in the funnel, right? Where I convert them, right? How do I create that lineage? How do I understand all of these things? And how do I go from even joining all of this data to have a data set or a data asset that represents people that have converted, that represents people that dropped off at the cold part of my funnel, that represents people that dropped off at the hot part of my funnel? How do I build these data assets? Data will get transformed along the line. Data lineage allows you to understand all of the different like processes, or all of the different checkpoints, all of the different versions of your data that has come together to create a particular data asset, right? That's what lineaging is all about. And then catalog helps with data discovery, right? And documentation also. So if you're thinking about catalog, think about it from this angle. When you go on Jumia and you are looking for a particular product, you basically have their website, and then once you log in on the website, you potentially search for the product you are interested in, right? You go on Jumia and then you check for the product you're interested in, and you don't have to go through all of the products on Jumia website. You have a search capability, so you can find out there's a name, there's probably a brand, there's a tag that you can use, right? So when you start to think about data like products, also when you start to think about your data assets like products, you can unlock this capability. So if you have an AI initiative tomorrow, right, and you are working on, oh, how do I build something that can improve recommendation? Let's say now you are able to link different customers that are buying certain products, and when they buy this product, you want to take that information and then you want to use it to recommend the products to another customer on your platform, right? How do I easily take advantage of this as a data scientist within the organization? The data catalog can help me discover if there's any kind of data asset already available, properly documented and reliable, that I can quickly use or take advantage of, right? And so that's another capability. And all of these capabilities help you to do what at the end of the day? Understand your data. So these capabilities connect to the objective of understanding your data. And these are capabilities within data governance that you can basically unlock, or these are capabilities that you can unlock through a data governance strategy or framework. Okay, let's talk about curating your data now. When we talk about curating the data, we are basically talking about, okay, now I understand there's a business initiative. I've been able to identify all of my different sources. I have an end game in mind. How do I bring this thing in, right? And step number one, data integration. When we're talking about data integration, we're talking about building pipelines. And when we build these pipelines, we gather all of this data from their different sources and we put them into a central repository that makes it easy for the business to take advantage of it, right? So when you're thinking data integration, those of you who think data engineering is equal to Airflow, that's what we're talking about here, right? Setting up pipelines, building stuff to pull your data from all of your different sources and put them in a location that is central, somewhere you can take advantage of it. Now, when we talk about data quality management, we will see eventually in this talk that for me to go from raw data to information to data assets that are reliable, there's usually a challenge, and it's usually data quality. Depending on the upstream sources you are relying on, right, and how much control you have over that source, right, there's a degree of quality issue that you can have, right? And I'll give you a good instance. Imagine that the PM has worked with the team, they've built a feature for people to enter certain information. Let's say you have, what do they call these people now? They usually work with the business and then they go into the field. Let's just call them operators for lack of a better word, business development executives, for example, right? So they go to the field on behalf of the business and then they collect information, right? If there's like, let's say a good example, state information, right? If you are using a drop down to identify is it 36 states in Nigeria now? I don't know. I mean, I'm wearing flag of Canada at the moment, so I don't even know how to. Yeah, but if there are 36 states in Nigeria, right? If I'm using a drop-down menu to identify the states, it's easier for me to pick a state and it's easy for that data to be consistent versus if people are entering the state in free form. So one person will type Abuja. I know Abuja is not a state, don't panic. One person will type Abuja, start with capital letter, end with capital letter. Another person will type Abuja, start with small letter, and then put capital letter in the middle, right? Another person will type what? Benue, right? And then, type it in another funny way, right? And what happens now? Because of that simple decision from engineering to make that input either free text versus making that input a drop-down menu, they have unintentionally created a data quality problem downstream. Because if I operate on the raw data now and I say I want to group by state, you'll find out Nigeria has 56 states. Just very easily. Why? Because somebody has not dealt with that issue upstream. Now, if the engineering team is internal, you know that you can easily fix that issue. You know, you can connect to your engineering team, tell them, oh, hey, we're noticing funny things in the data. So we'll create a cutoff point, open a ticket on your Jira board, and tell them to convert this thing from this to this, so that when the BDE guys go into the field, they would stop typing rubbish. Because there's a limit to how much you can control humans, right? But then your ability to control a system that you have designed by yourself is limitless. And if you are connecting to a third-party system, you'll be shocked. You might tell them, oh, this thing is free-form text. We want it to be dropped down. And they'll tell you, well, it's going to take us 24 weeks to start a sprint just to change free-form text to drop down, right? Why? Because you don't have control over that system. You don't know how many other people they have to deal with. You don't know what their processes are like internally. Right? And definitely processes are designed to protect people until they start to injure people anyways. But you don't have control of a third-party system as much as you have control over a system that you're designing by yourself. And so you find out that many times, depending on the sources you are dealing with, you will usually have data quality issues. And so, you know, unlocking this capability of data quality management, it comes with what? The process of what? Curating your data. And then master data management. Master data management is very similar to data integration, but then I'll give you a scenario that differentiates them. In master data management, you are focusing on very specific entities, right? Let's imagine that Workmate has designed a product suite, and then they have maybe 5 different products, and these products are targeted for people who work remotely. So they probably have a product for sleeping, they have a product to help you to track your eating habits, you know, 5 different products. Now, the definition of a customer to each of these products or each of these product domains will slightly be different from the definition of a customer to someone who is overseeing the entire product suite, right? Because to him now, a customer that makes him happy is a customer that does what? 1, appears in dimension 1, right? He's using all of the products. Dimension 2, he's using all of the products and he's using them really well, right? And so how do I now collect this data across board? How can I find someone who will focus on understanding who a customer is across my entire product suite, right? And curating data, collecting data, protecting data that concerns the concept of a customer. That's what master data management usually is about. That's why they call it master data, if that makes sense, right? Okay, so protect your data. Now, this objective is usually about, okay, now I've collected the data, I've identified my sources, I've profiled the data, you know, I've gathered everything, it's in my data warehouse. How exactly do I want to manage the life cycle of this data, right? How exactly do I want to ensure that, okay, this data is useful over time, right? And if you're working in a company like, let's use Jumia again, for instance. Jumia processes maybe hundreds of thousands of orders every single day. So you can imagine what happens after 2 years of being in operation, right? So if they process 1,000 order every day for 365 days, multiply 1,000 by 365, then multiply that by 10, you begin to realize that data will start to grow exponentially, especially if the product is doing well and you don't have saturation trouble, or you have a very, very loyal, what's it called now, pool of customers, right? But if I have a dashboard and I want to understand the performance of sale, does the dashboard necessarily need to calculate sales based on information from 10 years ago, knowing fully well that the market would have changed? Knowing fully well that, oh, there would have been change in product market fit. So what kind of data is still relevant, right? If this data is important to the people who are talking to VCs, right? And these VCs are asking, we want to see the performance of this company over time, all of that kind of stuff. There should be another strategy, another way to access that data, right? There should be a way to keep this data when I know that, okay, I'm not going to need it frequently, right? That protects me as an organization and increases my efficiency and reduce my compute cost. If you don't understand any of the things I just said, I don't even know if I should apologize. But yeah, okay, let's just continue. So data compliance now basically covers the things we've been talking about, GDPR, right? Aside from GDPR, I'll give you another use case I worked on. There was a company that basically had different teams working on their data, right? They had a, like a they had a particular consulting company that handled setting up their data warehouse, identifying all of their data sources, curating the data sources. They had another team that was building a chatbot for them that will sit on top of this data, and then they can ask questions against their database, ask the chatbot questions. And based on that free text that they were typing, they needed the chatbot to behind the scenes access the data and interpret the data. Then they had a separate team that was doing dashboarding work for them, right? And then they were working towards compliance because this particular firm, what they do is they work in the VC world. They are venture capitalists, right? And they have all sorts of sensitive information. So I can freely just go through their database, and maybe if they are funding OpenAI, for example, I will find the email of Sam Altman inside of that database, right? And so how do they protect this sensitive information? How do they ensure that, okay, like if there's a board that oversees compliance now, how if they vet us, right? How can we prove to them that we are being compliant, right? And obviously protecting this information falls under data security. But then so most times what you find is that people engage data security capabilities because of data compliance capabilities. Those two things are usually very connected, which is why there's the misconception that data governance is usually all about data compliance and data security, right? So how do they do all of these things, right? And they came up with a strategy, and then they designed different kind of rules. They designed like a security and a compliance framework. And then they said, okay, if you're from this particular organization, then you should have this kind of access to the data. If you're from this organization, then you should have this kind of access to the data. There are organizations that, because of compliance, if they will not even let you see certain records, right? Because imagine a very big hospital that basically has a database on information of clients all over the country, right? Or somebody who somehow has access to like a FinTech company's database, and then he has a girlfriend that broke his heart. And because the girlfriend broke his heart, you just use your super user privilege to move all the girlfriend's money from her account to your account by doing one simple select star, right? All of those kind of things, those are things you start to think about. So are we being compliant, right? I'll give you another example. I worked with another organization, also very big organization, that used to take contributions from people, right? They took contributions. They will basically sponsor different initiatives. You know how FEMCO was finding funding and supporting people during NSAS, right? That was basically it. But think of FEMCO as a service, if that makes sense, right? And then they are supporting different kind of initiatives. So they have different initiatives open, and you can make donations to support any of these initiatives, right? And it's usually somehow tied to the US government. Now imagine someone is funding a particular initiative, right? And then there's data protection, and like you have your data rights basically, right? And so they're kind of like things that you have to be compliant to in that angle. And all of a sudden tomorrow you want to exercise your deletion rights. Let's say because you are contesting for House of Rep, and then these people have data showing you funding something that you are now speaking against because of like your party, for example, right? And you want to protect yourself from problems from this kind of things. What do? You request that your data be deleted, right? And what we had to work on for them was designing a way to ensure that even though we are deleting sensitive information that concerns a particular person, how do we protect our books? Because obviously there has to be compliance in terms of money also. Because if I delete all the data that concerns someone that has contributed maybe $300,000 to like different causes over time, right? If I delete all of their data and I delete transactional data also, I can get into trouble. Not with the person, because there's a deletion right that the person is exercising that demands that I protect the person's integrity or protect the person's information by deleting their data from my system. But then I also have to consider a financial compliance also that expects me to store financial record associated with this person, even though I can no longer tie it to a particular person. So just think about it, blockchain without blockchain infrastructure, that kind of thing, right? But yeah, these are capabilities that can be enabled through data governance, right? And if you notice, we've said different things here. We've talked about data profiling, right? If you're a data engineer, whether your company comes with a data governance framework or not, you will most likely do something that has to do with profiling. We've talked about data lineage, we've talked about data cataloging, we've talked about data integration, which is the backbone of what you even do as a data engineer. So whether there's a data governance initiative in place or there's no data governance initiative in place, just so you can have dashboards that will be making your CEO happy. He's not seeing graph. The bars are going up and down. You still need to do data integration. And I'm telling you that it's a capability that is unlocked through data governance. So that tells you that what? All of these common tasks, all of these common capabilities, all of these common projects or initiatives is what makes up data governance. So if we're talking about data integration, it's a data governance initiative. If we're talking about data compliance, it's a data governance initiative. If we're talking about security, it's a data governance initiative. All of these things is what makes up your data governance framework. And it has been proven, and it's also advised, that if I'm building a data governance initiative, if I'm setting up an initiative for an organization to help them with data governance, it's very important to start from the finished fried rice and walk back to your ingredients. If you were here when we give that illustration, what am I saying? It's very important to identify a business initiative. The business initiative might be something, or the strategy of the business might be, oh, we are going to enable data capabilities. Like, we want to go to the next level in ensuring that we're a successful business, and we'll start using data. If that is an initiative, it will definitely have multiple use cases. Like, we want to improve the turnaround time, we want to improve user experience, we want to be able to detect fraud, all of these things. There will definitely be initiatives, right? But then it's starting from there and walking back and saying, what capabilities do I need to enable the business or help the business in this direction? Then you also walk back again and say, for me to take advantage of the capabilities, what kind of data does the business need? And that's how you build your priority list. That's how you build your roadmap, right? I believe the next thing here is connecting the dots, how to think of a roadmap, right? And so the first thing you would typically do is what? You find a business initiative to enable, right? And typically, because I work in consulting, basically, what we do when we start any engagement is to talk to business executives. We don't talk to the technical people first. We don't talk to the data engineers they have on their team first. The first people we talk to are who? The business executives. Because they are the one who can tell you high level what the business is all about. People have literally, think about a product like Linktree, for example. If you think about Linktree as an engineering problem, it's basically me building a web page, right? And allowing people to add links. And then once I allow people to add links, they can follow the link and go anywhere. So if I'm thinking about it from a technical standpoint, that is it, right? But then what exactly is the business of Linktree? What exactly is Linktree trying to solve from a perspective of meeting the need of a particular audience and in exchange of granting this service, generating revenue? If you think about something like 1Password, if you use 1Password, right? It's basically a vault where I can create, let's call them different directories. And inside of these different directories, I store potentially secret information, credentials. So if I think about it from an engineering standpoint, anybody can spin up a web page and allow me to hit an API endpoint and create different virtual boxes, right, or vaults where I can store information. Because technically, if you think about it, if your database today, your Postgres, your MongoDB, can hash your password and always verify in a reasonably secure way that you are the one logging in, and have this password in a way that if somebody just hacks your database and they don't have access to like credentials that you can use to compare the passwords and all of these things, right? They cannot compromise your password. They cannot log in on your behalf, right? Then if you think about it from that perspective, it's really just having a database, having an API on top of the database, and then based on what the user sends in through the client, I decide that, oh, I want to create this, But why is it such a successful business? Why do they have to hire over 1,000 people, right? Why is it thriving? It's usually beyond technical capabilities, right? And technical capabilities need to align with the business need. The reason why many of us, myself included, start all sorts of startups and then the startup refuses to start many times is because we are usually focused on technical capabilities. We don't think so much about how will this thing translate into revenue? How will this thing become reliable that anybody that is interested in using this thing or taking advantage of this thing can be enabled? And so when I'm doing my small shop business, I can't tell you from the bottom of my heart how many different channels I have orders from and accurately give you numbers on who is coming again and again. I just know that my one friend that likes my puff puff, and every time I enter his DM because I can remember him, I'm like, how far? I have not buy puff puff this week, and then that person buys puff puff. That's the only thing I know. I can't categorically tell you, okay, this is how money flows. This is the patterns I'm seeing. Only assumptions from experience, and assumptions are dangerous, right? And so it's very important to do what? Identify, like, a serious business will always set these goals. You need to align with those goals because typically that's where the money is. That's what is being funded by the business. That's what will take them from 1 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue. And so if me from the data side is aligning with those initiatives, I have a higher chance to have a budget to do this thing, and not to the glory of myself. At the end of the day, is to enable the business, is to unlock capabilities for the business. I made a post a few weeks ago where I started a series on LinkedIn about ETL and ALT, and somebody came on the post and was talking about how if anybody is trying to sell data engineering to you or learn data engineering or something, it's dangerous. At the end of the day, you build something the organization does not want and they'll fire you. And I can understand this person's pain. Probably he has been in an organization where there was a disconnect between what data initiatives and business initiatives. And because of this disconnect, maybe they fired an entire team. And so that person is talking from the perspective of, oh, this is how we worked as a data engineering team. This is how we built all sorts of things that they did not send us to build. And so we got fired. But if you align, if you prioritize business initiatives and you marry them with what? Your data initiatives, you are guaranteed to have a higher level or a higher chance of success, right? So find and understand the applications that will be deployed to support this initiative. If your company is working on fraud detection, they will probably deploy a system. There will probably be an external system. How do you provide the data that enables this external system? How will this external system work? What is required as input for this external system? So it's very important to understand what kind of applications will my company deploy to support this initiative. We want to get better at, or we want to improve customer experience. Are we going to integrate with Zoho? Are we going to, what CRM are we going to use? How are we going to track these things? Are we going to start using, what's the name of this thing called? This Google, whatever, right? To understand how people are clicking on our platform. Are we going to use a CDP like Segment, right? What kind of tools will my company use? You have to find and understand them, right? Access data management capabilities. When we're talking about accessing data management capabilities, right? We're talking about, okay, your profiling, the different, what's it called also? The different like domains that will be involved in all of these things. I need to identify them. I need to understand them. right? And then after you do that, you develop a data architecture and implement it. From a technical standpoint, this is where the data engineer wants to jump in. My mentor would tell me the first data person a startup needs, the first data person a company needs is usually a data engineer. And your first responsibility is not to build a pipeline, is to understand the business and enable an initiative. Right? And so if in the data governance framework, the only thing you guys are focusing on is, okay, how do we even do data integration? How do we marry all of this data and bring it to like a central point and ensure that we are taking advantage of this data in a central point to enable the business? Then that's good and fine. And that is why it's common for data integration to always happen. Whether you are thinking about security or compliance, you typically do data integration. And that's why it's easy for people to feel like, oh, data integration does not fall under data governance. But it is. Right? Okay. And then you plan after you develop the architecture, you design the entire system, you've identified your sources, you know what you're going to connect to, you know the kind of data you need, and then you implement it. The next thing you start to think of is, oh, I'm planning for data security. Right? So now I have data. How do I protect it? There's PII information here, information that identifies a person, sensitive information, maybe their email, for example, if they are maybe high profile people. They don't even need to be high profile people. I've seen organizations where they think that data governance is shouting on people for adding email to a report. That's how they are enabling data governance in their own organization. If you add email to the report, your manager will just shout on you. Don't add the email. Don't give anybody the phone number. It's understandable, right? I can literally go to an organization, work as a business development executive, and I'll have access to all of their customer base. And then I'll build a product to compete with them tomorrow. And maybe they are slimming down and I'm angry with the organization or something. And I can literally steal all their clients, especially if it's in a niche environment where they are focusing on a very, very particular problem and they've spent millions of naira trying to acquire customers, right? So, I mean, it's understandable to scream at somebody for exposing these things, but there should be a strategic plan. There should be a well thought out plan. There should be a framework to ensure that data is secured and accessed in a responsible way. Right? And then finally, you roll out an operating model. When we're talking about rolling out an operating model, what I'm referring to here is, how do I ensure that this initiative continues to work? If I have a plan, oh, this is how every time we get a new data source, we must identify PII columns in this data source. We must manually add it to our data catalog. We must add this tag, add that tag before the data is ready to be loaded into the data warehouse. Then after we load it into the data warehouse, whatever processes, right? How do you ensure that in the long run, somebody doesn't start to feel like, I can sneak this data through the back door and just pick it and go. Or I can carry this data and without thinking about this too much, I can just skip the line because one person in another department is shouting on me and is tagging the CEO in email and is telling me that I'm not doing my job or I don't know my job, right? So you have to roll out an operating model that protects the entire framework. Okay. Now, we've said so much about data governance, right? We've identified we've identified the objectives, we've identified the different capabilities that can be linked to all of these different objectives, right? One of the most common thing, like I said, that is usually dealt with is what? Data integration, right? And one of the most challenging things with building data assets or curating data and transforming it to a form that can be useful to your organization is what? Data quality. So what is data quality exactly, right? So as you can see, it's basically you trying to determine how useful or useless, right, a particular data asset is to you with respect to your business initiative. Now, there are two things I forgot to mention. When you're thinking about data governance, you're thinking about, okay, how can I enable a particular initiative within an organization? But then as the data custodian, you should also be thinking about how can I enable across, or how can I create an enablement across multiple business initiatives? Because you can start with enabling the data team, after you enable, the marketing team, after you enable the marketing team, you need to enable finance. There will typically be an intersection. There's data that finance uses that marketing uses. There's data that growth uses that marketing uses. Data that, I don't know, your inventory team uses that finance also uses, right? So there will usually be a point where these things marry. So how am I integrating this data? How am I collecting all this data to ensure that within a particular initiative and across multiple initiatives, I'm building a system that can stand the test of time, right? And so basically, the biggest challenge is usually data quality. One of the most exciting projects I worked on last year was one where we were building the product for a particular company, and their product was data, literally data. The idea in this company was that they basically know that, okay, people are interested in looking up a particular information. Imagine, let me dumb it down. Imagine you have a database, and then that database is a database of what will I call it now? What can I think of? Celebrities. Let's just talk about celebrities, right? I mean, obviously that would be funny, but imagine there's a database of celebrities, right? And that database, you can look up maybe the net worth of the celebrity accurately, or you can also look up their phone number. That's sensitive information, and phone number is something that can change over time, right? And so what we did for them is, like, they were working with multiple organizations. One of the organizations will collect all of the celebrity information from reliable sources, right? They will curate all that information and then they'll pass it to us. We will try to link the information. So how do we ensure that this name from source A is carrying information about another person in source B? How do we link all of these things together so that we can reliably tie and say, okay, this is the list of, in this case now, phone numbers that belongs to this particular celebrity. This is this particular celebrity current net worth. How do we tie all of these things together? And what we found out is that, because you are pulling this thing from different sources, they have different column names. Now let's bring it down to that level that represents the same information. These people can say age and then they will give you a number. These other people can say age, or they will not have age, but they have date of birth. So how do we collect all of this data from these different sources, map it to what we call the canonical schema, right? And ensure that even though the data from different sources have different shapes, we can somehow transform all of them into a singular unit, a canonical unit, right? And then pass that data now from their data warehouse where we pulled all the data and we treated it, and send it into the application's backend, right? Like, how do we go end to end like this and ensure? And one of the biggest challenge we faced was what? Data quality. Data quality, because things were changing rapidly in all of these different sources, right? And it was another team, a third party, that was responsible for pulling the data. So we needed to have an understanding with them. But then when we had the data, we had to treat the data, right? And then put the data in a particular form and in a particular shape, ensure that the data is good to go, and then deliver the data into their product so that somebody who subscribed can easily get a number. And think about this thing. Imagine all the girls crushing on Johnny Drill. I mean, and then, they pay for your app. And then after you put all the thing there now, there's phone number. Then they look at the phone number and then they call the phone number and the shatter bundle that picks up the call. They will be annoyed. It's sensitive. My product is not working, basically. What happened? Maybe along the way, you shatter bundles data looks like Johnny Drill data. So you mixed it up somewhere. And then when you were filtering things out, you gave shatter bundle Johnny Drill's phone number. Shatter bundle will be very happy. He'll probably fund you as a VC. And then you give Johnny Drill shatter bundle's number, right? You mix up the entire thing. That's a data quality problem, right? And it can make or break the system. Now, what happens in the mind of the customer? If you think about it from the business angle, that person is angry. Do you understand? He's no longer finding your product interesting. You're not meeting his this thing. Or you make a wrong assumption about somebody's net worth and the person sues you. Bass goes for those people that understand pidgin, right? You just collect trouble for what? For building a product, for wanting to be a startup, right? And so data quality is actually very important. And there's something I wrote here: data quality dimensions are measures of specific attributes, right? So that means there are dimensions of data quality. If we remember when we're talking about profiling, I said that data profiling is about what? Systematically looking at the data. You have an approach, you have an algorithmic mind, right? To looking at the data. You have a strategy for analyzing the data because there are very specific things you are looking for, right? And so if we think about the problem of data quality, how do we assess data quality? There are certain dimensions, there are certain things that comes together that defines data quality. So if you're working on an exciting project and you're trying to build a data quality dashboard, you need certain metrics, right? And those metrics are what? Completeness. That's one dimension. And when you're talking about completeness, is the degree to which all records have data populated when expected. What do I mean by this? If I expect that every single celebrity in my data set must have a phone number, right? If I cannot find the phone number, that celebrity's information should not make it into my application, right? Then any record where the phone number is missing is not a complete record. So with respect to a particular column or a particular field in a particular record, right? If a field is expected to always be there and that field is not there, or that value is not there, then that record is not complete. And that's basically like the dimension of completeness. When we talk about validity, it is the degree to which values in a data element are valid, right? So first problem, there has to be phone number. Second problem, does the phone number contain 11 digits? If there's a phone number, if there's a value there, but that value is not a valid phone number, then although that record is complete, it is not valid. It is invalid, right? And uniqueness is very easy. There should not be two shatter bundle in my database because there's only one shatter bundle. At least that's what I know. I don't know if there's another one, right? There should not be two Olamide Badu in my database. I only know that there's one Olamide, right? And that's uniqueness. Timeliness, the degree to which the data set is available when needed. Now, this is something that can easily be looked down upon, but there is a dimension, and I'm not preaching, where data is useless if it does not come in a timely manner. Right? And that is basically it. If I basically need to make a decision by 10 o'clock and that record comes in by 11 o'clock, I've lost the window. Imagine cases of fraud, real-time fraud detection, and you are relying on a particular field and then a process fails downstream. And so you cannot combine that field with the data, like with the transaction data as it's coming in to decide whether that transaction is fraudulent or not. They would have emptied somebody's account, and the person will go online and shout, I could have killed a lot. Why? They trusted in your product and you failed them at their time of need, right? And so timeliness is also what? Very important. Consistency, the degree to which data is the same across all instances. Think about it in terms of batches, right? And this is a problem we also try to solve when we're dealing with like our data quality issues. If I know that typically, and this applies to like machine learning applications, right? If you're thinking about machine learning applications, there's something we call population drifts. And when we're talking about population drift, or like your quote unquote your scorecard, your stability index for your model, it's the fact that the data I used to train my model, right? I had information about the gender of my customer. Let's say I'm lending money to people. When I trained the model, the population of male to female was 70-30. And I found out that the 30% of females were paying back the loan very well. And let's say that field now became a field that had a weight on my model that impacted the model's decision, right? And so if you are a female, I will most likely give you a loan because what? I know that it's 70-30, right? And females are most likely to pay the loan compared to male, right? Tomorrow, the distribution drastically changes. And now you have 90% of females and 10% of males. I have news for you. Somebody has figured out that if he comes to your system and he lies that he's a woman or he identifies as a woman, he has probably figured out that they'll give him the money and he has no plans of paying, right? And so how do I ensure that as I'm looking at new batches of data, right, that I'm not seeing any drastic change, I'm not detecting any kind of like anomaly in the change of my population? That's basically what consistency addresses, right? And accuracy is the degree to which the data is correct and represents the truth. And the way, like, to like differentiate this from validity, right, is the way I would like for you to think about it is think about it dimensional wise, right? From source A, now from like your data management perspective, let's go back to Workmate and having a product suite with like 5 different products. If I pull up customer information from a data management perspective, master data management perspective, the information should be accurate across board. So if the information here says that the name of this person is Kule and Kule is 97 years old, I shouldn't check source B and find the exact same Mr. Kule, and now Kule is a star boy, he's 24 years old. Something is wrong somewhere. There is a disconnect, right? And that is what accuracy talks about. So across different batches, how is my data consistent population-wise? We're talking about consistency. Across different batches, how is the information reliable? We're talking about accuracy, right? And so those are your different data quality dimensions. And we've addressed this indirectly, right? Causes of poor data quality. When we're talking about freeform fields versus what's it called? Versus your drop down, right? Sometimes it may be as a result of what? Of human error, right? People are not perfect. Very, very good example. There's an organization I was working with where they had data for fulfillment of orders. And in this organization, they had this concept of partially fulfilled orders, right? And you have partially fulfilled or fully returned. So when something is partially fulfilled, it means that some of the items in the order was accepted by the customer, but either some of the items or some unit of a particular item was returned by the customer, right? And a partially fulfilled order and a fully returned order had a common state called return. You first of all mark the order as return, and then after you mark the order as return, you mark it as what? Either partially fulfilled or fully returned. What we saw at the end of the day when we're trying to understand revenue for this business is that some people were making mistakes with the state. Once they see returned, they flip it to fully returned. Right? And so we were losing certain information based on that data. Obviously, you can argue the engineers that built the system, they also had their faults, right? But then if you think about it from another angle also, these humans were trained. They forgot it's not home training, but they forgot their business training. They forgot the training, right? And because of that, there was a misalignment. So money in the bank was not lining up with what the system was saying we were making. And these kind of problems are very, very hard to trace or solve. You start to look across multiple systems. Your data is automatically not reliable because the finance person will rather go and sit down with the invoices and be reconciling one by one so that the CEO will not shout on him than to look at your data that is supposed to make his life easier. Am I safe? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, got scared for a second. All right, cool. Right? All right. I think I'm almost rounding up. Sorry, I just need to be sure I am on track. All right, cool. So let's flip over to we talk about causes of poor data quality and what else? Consequences of bad data quality, lack of trust, flawed insights, poor organizational efficiency, and then how do we enforce data quality, right? If we're talking about enforcing data quality, typically What people usually have is custom unit tests. And if you're familiar with like the process of engineering, you will basically have certain assumptions about your code. And every time you make changes to your code and you push that code to production, you expect that those assumptions don't change, right? But data is not like software. That's the first thing I have to tell you, right? And so many times when you write your test, your system can continue to work even if there's bad data. What do I prefer? Isolate the bad data, take the good data, continue to work. So it doesn't map one-on-one with like unit tests when you're thinking about software, right? Great Expectations is a Python tool that people can use to enforce data quality. I like it, but the bad side with Great Expectations is that what's it called? The learning curve is very steep. It's very, very confusing. I spent weeks trying to understand it. Soda is cool, but then Soda kind of has this risk of vendor locking. Soda has a very, very high tendency to tie you into their platform because there are certain capabilities that you don't have access to that you should if you like you don't have like a cloud account. DBT is not a data governance tool, right? It's a data transformation tool, but DBT is very powerful. So DBT comes with custom tests, unit tests, a lot of things that ensures that, oh, once my data is in my data warehouse and I'm building end to end, I can get stuff done, right? But then, I mean, it's not a data transformation tool. But then if you're interested, these are tools you can look up. And then there's the concept of data contracts, which I don't even want to talk about too much because I feel like I will get carried away again talking too much. But data contracts can also help you, like it can help create some sort of understanding between your source and your destination, or your data producer and your data consumer, where you tell them this is what you should always expect. And once it is agreed upon, the data producer should honor the contract, and the data consumer should expect that data that they are accepting will always honor the contract. Right? That's the whole idea with data contracts. You can definitely read it up. It's kind of like the new kid on the block. It's buzzing basically, right? And I mean, conclusion, we've looked at a lot of things today, but then at the end of the day, I feel like the most important thing to take away from this conversation is the fact that you cannot really unlock, like get the best out of your business, right? If there is a misalignment between your business initiatives and your data initiatives, they must marry, they must work together. Do you understand? To enable success in an environment where you are trying to be data centric. Thank you very, very much for your time, and thank you for having me. But yeah, I think this is where I'm going to close the curtain on this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you so much. I like the energy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful section taking us through data for our startup, managing data for our startup. Okay, so quickly, I think we've taken so much about. I mean, we've taken so much time already. We would be moving to the next section immediately. Shortly, I'll be handing over to Mr. David Oimbo, who will be taking us through the next section quickly, so we don't keep us waiting for too long. So, David, over to you, sir. Sorry, I'm breathing hard. I'm on my way home from work. I'm just walking down. So, David.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Iano. And thank you very much for this session, Mr. Emmanuel. It was really powerful and I learned a lot from it. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the Workmate Startup Acceleration Program 2024. And we've spoken about some basic building blocks for running your startups, from software engineering to DevOps to data management to data governance to communication and product management. And we hope to continue with this trend with you guys. Then also, if you are not on our WhatsApp community, you can send your email or your phone number and we'll add you to the community. If you have any idea that you want to collaborate on rather, you can send us a message or send a message on the community and you probably find some other startups or skilled individuals that will be able to help you out on it. Yeah, then the recordings and the slides for every session, for all the sessions, will be uploaded to YouTube and will be made available on the community also. And also in a week's time, that's 1 week time from now, we should be able to get the certificates across to people that were able to attend consistently. Yeah, so this brings us to the end of the Workmate Acceleration Program 2024. And we thank you guys for attending, and we wish to see more of you.
Thank you so much, Workmate. Thank you. I think we can on mute and say thank you, and thank you to the team for putting together for us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Davy. Thank you, Miss Mary. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bayero. Thank you, Mr. Adetunji. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence Shogu.